Hello, my name is Jackson, and today we're going to be talking about three main stages in the changes of matter. So first we're going to start off with a solid going to a liquid. So for our example solid, we're going to choose an ice cube. So before we do anything, we're going to check the water particles in that ice cube. As you can see right here, they're very well compact, nothing too out of the ordinary. They're very well organized, pretty neat. They do move around a little bit, that's alright. So before we do anything else, to change it to a liquid, we need to add something called heat. And when we add heat, something called melting forms. Melting is when we add a certain object, like this ice cube right here, and when heat is applied to that certain object, it starts to melt and spread out. Like so. With the given heat, the water particles in that solid, the ice cube, the heat gives the water particles some energy so they can move around and spread apart when it turns into a liquid, like so. So far we have a solid changed to a liquid. Now we gotta change this liquid to a gas. Before we do, we should look at the liquid's water particles. As you can see right here, they're pretty well spread out and they're not as compact as the solid was before. But before we do anything, to change it to a gas, we need to add heat. When we add heat, there's two type of things that happen. But first we're going to go over vaporization. Two main things in vaporization is boiling and there is also evaporation. Big word there. Evaporation is when only the top of the water starts to get a little misty and emits some steam. And boiling is when the water surface starts to, boil and has bubbles at the top. And you can tell when it's starting to boil when the water's constantly moving. When you add heat to the water, when it starts to boil, the energy from that heat given to the water will start to make that water in the pot starts to rise, which is also known as steam. That's called vaporization. So during vaporization, there was enough energy for the water in the pot to boil up and spread up into steam and spread apart. They basically took flight. All the water particles in that pot just took flight and expanded everywhere. But if we were going to change from a solid to a liquid and a liquid to a gas and change the gas back to a liquid, we'd have to cool down any of the surface. So we'll cool down the pot, for example, and eventually those water particles in the air will start to go away, and when they hit the surface, they start to turn back into water again. And that is called condensation. Another big word there. When the water hits the cold surface, it decreases in the energy because when it was emitted with heat, it got more energy and started popping and flying into the air. But once it hit cold surface, it started dying down and losing that energy that it got before. So this brings us to our last phase. First we change the solid to a liquid, then that liquid to a gas. And we change that gas to a liquid, and now we gotta change the liquid to a solid. So how will we do that? Well, first, we can put the pot that we boiled the water in the beginning into a fridge. And when we put in there, it's just something called freezing. So like before, at the beginning, when the solid with the ice cube, when it was put in the fridge, it kept solid. It was solid, and all the water particles were combined, and they were put together and smashed together, and they became an ice cube again. So the same thing goes for here when we go and put the water into the fridge. would be freezing the water and turning it back into another ice cube. And in the end, when you think about it, if you keep doing these steps over and over again, it's basically just kind of like a cycle. It's non-stop. Pretty cool, huh? So in the end, the whole thing is kind of like a cycle, continually going over and over again.